Hey everybody, welcome to week number 8, and this is a short video to just help guide you through your second source commentary and help prepare you for our week number 8 seminar. And this week we're going to be focusing on how the impact of the Black Death transforms medieval society, particularly our medieval peasants and the serfs in England. And we're going to be looking at how not just the Black Death, but it was a whole century of hardship. It was what some historians have likened to imagery of the biblical apocalypse, because the Black Death hit in 1348 in England. It also, before that, was decades of famine, hardships of war, and between those three things also just brought massive death, which is very much like the four horses of the apocalypse in the Bible. But those things didn't disrupt or abolish serfdom in the feudal system, but it certainly started to crumble it. There was a society of collapse. The old system now was but a toothless smile of what it was, and you're starting to see a lot of things change. So we're going to be looking at Walsingham Le Willows. We've looked at it before in the court rules from the late 1200s and the beginning of the 1300s. But now, after all these hardships of a century, by the time of the Black Death and after the Black Death, you start to see more resistance and changes occurring across medieval England. But specifically, we're going to see it in our source this week. Now, one of the things you start to think about is with massive death, there's a disruption in the way the labor works. There's a push and pull demand between the workers and the job market and pay and all those kind of things playing out, the wages. And if you start to have peasants calling for higher wages because there's a smaller workforce, how does the government in medieval England respond? How does the crown respond? And one of the ways they do that, in 1351, just a few years after the Black Death, they institute the Statutes of Labours. So we're going to be able to look at, through this source of Walsingham Le Willows, how after the Black Death, those that survived are now calling for change in their dynamic and their society in the manorial system, looking for waged labor, but how the statutes of labor and also the ordinance of labor, even before that in 1349, are going to play a role and to help regulate what's happening inside after the Black Death. So what we're going to be able to look at this week is how a before and after effect. I want you to think about and sort of reflect on what we've looked at in the last 8 weeks of how the manorial life worked with peasants, with those that were free, with the villeins, with the cotters, those that were also getting paid for their wages in some regards, and their reaction to power on the manor, what role the Lord plays. Think about all the discussions we've had, and now think about, after the Black Death, how this is disrupted, how their lives change, and how things are going to start to unravel in this system. So that's by looking at that question and thinking about that, you're going to be able to answer some of the key questions, looking at the court rules of what is it saying about changes in society. So there's going to be 2 questions on your source commentary that are going to specifically target specific things within the sources to grab. But then the third question is really going to be around the importance of the central problem of this whole thing is, how did the Black Death affect medieval peasant life? And I want you to pull in and focus on the readings for this week to be able to answer this question. And so I try to just use sources this week. You could pull in any of the sources from the last 8 weeks, but stick to the secondary readings from this week to be able to help guide you and think about how life from before the Black Death and what examples you have from after the Black Death are really going to show a transformation effect. Okay, so that's what you're gonna write on. That's how you're gonna be able to formulate those 3 questions that are going to be here for your 850 word response, and that's going to help guide our discussion. What's going to happen on Wednesdays? We're going to I'll kick off with a little lecture just an overview of some of the stuff that's been happening in our class so far with the peasants and how the 14th century starts to transform everything. So we're going to look at it from a global scale of what's happening with the 14th century changes. And then we're going to dive into specifically this manor of Walls and Willows, and you're going to tell me, and we're going to be able to grab together all the stuff that's going to be the focus of your source commentary. Now, like always, of course, this is due on noon on Wednesday. So if you really just missed the question completely or want to add something, feel free to email me, and I will keep that into account when I do the marking. And then also have a look at this, what's the sources are. Have a look at the secondary reading, and if you would like to meet on Monday or Tuesday, have a virtual chat, a one-on-one office hour, please email me, and we could schedule that for either Monday or Tuesday, so you can absolutely rock your second source commentary and make sure all aspects of that. Look at the rubric and make sure all those things, besides not just the content, but the presentation, how you're doing the citing. Make sure to cite everything you can. If you're putting in any facts and figures, or referring from the secondary reading, make sure that's in there in the CMS format. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to what you have to say. There's a lot of ways to answer the third question of how medieval Black Death affected our medieval peasants, so that before you can focus on not everything, because that's going to be a thesis, but pick one or two things that you can see from before and after, and be able to bring in the sources to be able to show that. So if you have questions about that, email me. If you want to meet one Monday or Tuesday, email me. And otherwise, I will see you Wednesday with your second source commentary and looking at the Black Death and our medieval peasants. Thank you so much. You're doing great. And again, congratulations to those two that did the presentation. It was fantastic. You did a great job. I really enjoyed that. And I look forward to see you all on Wednesday.